settle for less. It's all in your head, how you think you manifest. So get ready to rise, cause we about to be the best. Gotta switch it up, gotta break the old habits. Get your mind right, turn your dreams into habits. No negative vibes, only positive thoughts.
What is up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Mindset Cafe podcast. It's your boy Devin, and today I am honored to be on another episode with this gentleman, right? We were on his podcast, Coffee, Chaos, and Cash Flow, and it was a great conversation, and I wanted to kind of bring it back and go round two with it and kind of put him on the other side of the stool. So without further ado, I'm sitting down today with Aram Street, right? He tried to give me a different pronunciation and it almost threw me off, right? But he is a serial entrepreneur and a business builder, a risk taker who's, walked away from a lucrative career in household management and really bet on himself to start a business, right? So that's one of the biggest things on Mindset Cafe is but also betting on yourself. So thank you so much. Thanks so much. Let's dive in a little bit.
So what's happening?
So with your whole bring up and everything, right? What was your background like? What was your parents like? What was your childhood like?
Yeah. So it was interesting. I had a great growing up experience. 5 siblings. We're all spread out in ages. So we're pretty, it was like a couple of us on one end. The older ones were already basically in college by the time I was grown up. And so my dad was a Nazarene evangelist. So he traveled, did a lot of revivals and speaking engagements for different churches. And then when he wasn't traveling, he was building homes, specifically A-frames were just like his thing. So he was pretty much self-employed growing up, but we didn't have a strong business background. It was just kind of what my dad was doing. And he was very financially on top of things. So he made a lot of good decisions. But growing up, I had a good work ethic taught to us. We all knew what it meant to work really, really hard, but not necessarily how to build a business and go out and do it. We were just, I grew up thinking I was just going to be a great worker, go to work, 9 to 5, punch my time. And it really, where things started to turn for me were people like Robert Kiyosaki. I remember the first time I saw the cash flow quadrant and heard about it. It was brand new. I had no idea. Even though I grew up, my dad was making money other ways than as an employee. It still didn't hit to me personally. That's something that's attainable, right? So I was seeing the S, the B, and the I quadrants, and even knowing that they existed as viable options for people was kind of a epiphany, if you will. So that's people like him really got me thinking in the direction of, hey, what would it be like to create income rather than just make it from a paycheck? So a little bit of background there. Yeah.
So what was your first job in what did that, what was basically your career path to becoming an entrepreneur?
Yeah, my first job was McDonald's in size 16. Nothing particularly sexy or interesting about that. It was just we had to start buying our own stuff. I think at 12 was the age where my parents hey, you got to get your own clothes, your own, you got to provide for anything that's not food, basically. So as soon as we could legally start working, it was, we had to get income from somewhere. So other than the roof over our heads and the food in our stomachs, we were paying for everything. So I got a job as early as I could. That wasn't, nothing exciting to write home about, but that was my first thing. And then when I moved to Lexington in 2012, Lexington, Kentucky, I got this job as what was called a houseman, basically glorified housekeeper for this 25,000 square foot house. It was this mansion on a 1,000-acre horse farm, beautiful 18th century French architecture, just an incredible, massive place. I tripped into that job by accident. They ended up making me the household manager a couple years into it, which basically is a butler, North American equivalent for the butler role. And so that's how I started out my adult career. I was just kind of in this, didn't have any connection to it, sort of tripped into it. They sent me to an academy in Toronto and I got certified as butler. So I had a cool career, I suppose. And then in 2020, I got fired from that job. And it's without going into a lot of detail, it's kind of funny because I knew for a full year that I was going to be let go before he fired me. It was just some discussions about compensation that just ended up not going well. I was really, really underpaid. And I was like, hey, I think, I could get a bump here. And my employer was super not happy about it. So I knew for a full year he wanted to fire me, but it was so hard to source my job. He had to wait till I found somebody, train them, and then when they were competent, that person took my place. So I basically trained my replacement, got let go in April, I think, ish of 2020. And by that point, I'd read enough and kind of done some side hustle things to know that I really wanted to be an entrepreneur. My wife and I had talked about it, and it was like, look, we can do it now. We can either stay in household management. We can move and I can get a different job, making much, much better money even than I had been making. But we're always going to be at someone else's whim. There's someone else going to be signing what we call the front of the check. And we're just going to be signing the back of the check. So I kind of wanted to flip that script a little bit. And we thought, hey, there's no time like the present. We just got let go. We've got a month to figure this out and see what we could do. So that's how I got into entrepreneurship. I was sort of halfway pushed into it, knew it was coming. And that's what got us out of the nest, so to speak.
So I want to rewind something that you said that kind of intrigued me. Did you say that you got certified as a butler?
Yes. So there's this place. There are basically a handful of internationally known academies for butlers and household managers. And I was certified with the Charles McPherson Academy in Toronto, Ontario, back in I think 2016 is when I went up there, went through their program. And it's like a month-long program that you just learn every in and out from an international perspective on what it means to be a household manager or a butler. And it was great. Learned a lot of really cool stuff I've been working in for a while, and then a lot of new insights. So yeah, I'm trained at a very unique background. Most people, I'll tell them what I used to do, or even when I was working, like, wow, I've never met a butler before. It's like, I'm usually a first time for most people there. And it's kind of funny too, because I'm in Kentucky. So it's not exactly like LA or New York City where there's a few more of those people. We're just like, there's like 3 of us, in this greater Midwest area. So it's a really interesting, very, very niche markets workforce, but it was fun. I learned a lot, had a great time, and don't plan on going back, but cool stories.
No, I mean, the reason I asked is because like when you hear butler, like I was thinking of like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and
Yep.
And everything is like did you wear the suit? Is it like, how is that whole process?
Yeah. So it was my particular job was kind of semi-formal. So we had, it was slacks and a dress shirt, and that was about as formal as they never had us do white tie or anything like that. So it was somewhat laid back. The setting itself, it was a similar like dress setting, but very, very formal interaction. So it's just the principals, just the man and his wife, and they ran everything like really, 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 really well. So we were just managing this massive home, making sure everything was getting done, from housekeeping to contracting to just any random thing. Could be landscaping. You just overseeing the estate essentially, right? So there wasn't a ton they were really private. So the one thing they didn't do was entertain a lot, which is one of the hardest jobs in private services, having to entertain a lot of parties. So thankfully for me, my principals just didn't love to have a ton of people throw a lot of parties. So it made my job much, much easier than most of my colleagues, because, people at that kind of net worth, they're having, 200-300 person parties like every other weekend. And if you can imagine the background work that takes to put that together. So I was fortunate to not be doing that all the time, but yeah, it was a pretty interesting realm. I mean, it's a big house, like a really, really, really cool place. And it's the kind of thing that you just wouldn't find yourself in unless you're in that, you personally have that kind of net worth and you're building those kind of homes. So it was unique for sure.
No, it is super. That's why I had to ask. It's not every day you come across like that kind of background and that kind of story. So,
yeah.
One thing I do want to ask is like, okay, so now that you got let go or you're transitioning, instead of trying to pivot and do something similar, you took a different route, right? You went the entrepreneurial route. And so what was that mindset shift for you? And, let's dive into what your next step was.
For sure. So from a mindset perspective, so the year I told you about that, I knew for sure he wanted to let me go, but he just didn't have anybody to take my space. I did interview for several other household management jobs across the US. I got fairly close to taking a job in Cleveland, Ohio, but biggest thing was that it was in Cleveland. It's like, who wants to go to Cleveland, right? So always diss on Cleveland. I got some friends up there. So whenever I get a chance, I kind of throw some shade that way. But no, we got to the point where, again, my wife and I sat down, we had 4 kids at the time, and we're like, look, we can keep doing this. We can make a lot more money than we're making right now, but I'm going to just continue working the same schedule. I'm going to probably spend more hours, 60 to 80 hours working for somebody else. And we're never going to build anything unless we, get control of it and build it. So the mindset shift was just getting to the point of thinking about, okay, what can I do? How quickly can I implement it? And the reason I started a cleaning company was I'm a much more of a black and white person than I am like a super creative individual. So I like to think of things in as logical terms as possible. I thought, hey, if I start a cleaning company, I can build a cool brand around that because there aren't that many cleaning company owners that were trained butlers, right? I have a really, really weird, specific, high ends, I guess you could say, training here. So I can capitalize on that. And that's why I started a cleaning company. It just made the most sense. And if I was going to go to a market and create customers there and find them, that was the easiest thing for me to get into that made the most sense. I talk about this when I think of like business. A lot of people want to go into business and they talk about like doing something that they love, right? I think that's great if you can do something that you love, but you need to do something that's going to make money more so than do something you love all the time. If both of them line up, that's amazing. Good for you. But if they don't, like I love to skydive. I just don't have a way to make a lot of money with that because I'm not going to teach people how to do it. I just want to do it. Right. So that's going to cost me money. It's not going to make me money. So for me, it was just it was an X's and O's thing. I'm just lining up the play. And I thought, hey, I can go into this. I know where the market is. I have a really good network. People know my background is in household management. This should be pretty easy. And it was the best thing for me to do at the time to start creating income, because when you go from working to building a business, I mean, literally, it's like 1 week I had a paycheck every Friday and I knew what the amount was. It was the exact same for like years with very minimal adjustments. And then all of a sudden it's not there. It's like, you have to create it. Like you have to go out and find value in the market and give people a reason to write you a check. And that's a shift. And it's sort of scary, starting out, because you're hoping that it happens quickly and that you can cover your bases as quick as possible. So you're not just, losing money and homeless for long. So it is a bit of a shift, but I think being, not super risk averse helps. And for whatever reason, I am oriented towards risk, for better, for worse. I probably err too much on the side of doing a lot of risky stuff. So that was just a personality, psychological composition that really helped me there too.
No, I mean, you said you guys had 4 kids.
Yeah, we have 5 now. So we had 4 when we made the transition, and then almost a little over a year after that, we found out we were having our 5th. And so yeah, we were in the thick of it. It was going down. Yep.
Man, I have 1 and 1 on the way, and I can't even fathom 3, let alone 5. That's intense.
Yep, it is. 3. I will say 3 is the magic number. I always tell people, if you can get to 3 and get a handle on it, you're fine after that. Like 1 and 2 was whatever. We had 3. We had no idea what was happening. We thought we had just like forgotten everything that there was to know about parenting. Once we got sort of the hang of 3, 4 and 5, you don't even notice that it's like, oh yeah, we're on autopilot. We got this. So I just tell people, we'll just get to 3, get it on lockdown. You'll be fine from there. You can get 7, 10, it probably doesn't matter.
So with that being said, are you guys planning on more?
Oh yeah. So we've said for like since the beginning, people are like, are you gonna have any more kids? I'm like, oh yeah, double digits, baby. We're gonna get to 10
Really?
plus. That's sort of lighthearted because we genuinely don't have a number. We've never come up with like, hey, we didn't plan and decide, hey, at this number we're done. We've just always been like, yeah, like not right now. We'll wait a little bit, but we've never had a hard and fast cutoff date. So part of it, whether or not we have any more biological kids, we definitely want to adopt down the road. We kind of have a plan mapped out for that. And that's going to be 3 to 4 years, probably conceivably, before we start on that journey. But that is definitely like something that we want to do. I grew up with foster kids growing up in our house. My wife is actually adopted. So we have a lot of firsthand experience with those realms and see a big need there. So a lot of desire to do that. We all want our kids to get a little bit older and develop different routines and stuff before we jump into it. But yeah, I think it's definitely foreseeable that we'll hit double digits. I'm still holding out for that. So
So that movie Cheaper by the Dozen is going to be, your lifestyle.
Yeah. It's so funny. I still haven't seen that. I don't know how many times people reference that. And I'm like, oh yeah, I need to watch that because people keep saying it. And I still haven't seen it. So gotta put that on the playlist at some point. But
No, yeah. I mean, that's awesome though. So, I mean, many people though fear leaving a stable income, right?
yep.
To essentially take that bet on themselves and take that leap, even though, you think that it's going to be a great, transition or a stable transition, right? But at the end of the day, everything is still a risk. And, you had a family, you had 4 kids. So what was like the mindset of, trying to subside that, uncertainty or that negativity of, hey, it didn't work out off of, day one. And I'm growing this to be stable and support a family of 6, essentially with you, your wife, and your kids.
Yeah. Well, for me, I can just tell you what it was for us. Everybody's story is a little bit different. For us, because again, it was kind of our choice to have a large family and to jump into that and grow that early on. We were a little bit more financially limited, for obvious reasons than a lot of people. So we were working with smaller budgets, I guess you could say, in terms of free cash to just throw around and experiment with different ideas. So knowing that out of the gate, I knew, particularly in building a business, in the early stages, I was probably going to be hustling a lot on the side to help out and get that moving. So that could, like, for me, for a couple of years early on, I was doing a lot of rideshare driving. I was doing food delivery along with building a business and getting it to a point of sustainability. So I never had a complex where it's like, oh, I'm too good to do this, right? Like I'm going to be an entrepreneur, so I'm not going to do all these other things that sometimes people look down on. I just threw that out from day one. It's like, look, our goal is to get here. We want to become financially independent. And if we're going to build it ourselves, we're probably going to have to do a lot and work a lot in a lot of different areas and pull money from wherever we can to get this thing off the ground. And so for me, it was like, look, this is my responsibility. I got to make this happen, providing for the family. And there's nothing that I'm too good to do, essentially, right? I didn't have a line there. I'm surprised. Like, it's not across the board. A lot of entrepreneurs aren't this way, but I'm surprised by the number of people I've talked to who are like, oh yeah, I wouldn't do that. Like I'd never drive for DoorDash. Like I'm just not going to do that. Right. It's almost like there's a little bit too posh for it. So that was one thing that for me personally, I just got past. I wasn't going to not do something because I thought I was too good for it. And again, I think you have different options if it's just you, especially if you're single or if it's just you and your wife, you don't have kids. You kind of have a lot more freedom to experiment and try things because you don't have as many, mouths to feed, lives on the line. In my case, we're just, our backs were a little bit more up against the wall. So that might have helped. But again, not being risk averse and being willing to do whatever you need to do to make it happen really, really, really helped us in a long way. I'm also really fortunate that even though, especially early on, I really sucked at communication, right? You'd think, my wife and I have been married for 13 years now, and she's incredible. But even like in the early years, I just didn't communicate well at all. So she really, really hung with me through a lot of just Aram's doing stuff. He's booking meetings, he's doing things. And then she's just will find out about it when she finds out about it. I just was terrible at that. So I was really, really fortunate that she was very long suffering and hung in there with me until I found out, hey, I could include Beverly on this journey, right? Like she's actually part of this equation. Maybe I could like cue her in a little bit and we could do this together. And that really was something that in the last year or two started becoming a much more common fixture in our relationship and has helped out tremendously. And it's just silly things like that sometimes I think entrepreneurs are super like tunnel vision. We can get very, very task oriented and close out a lot of people that are really close to us and very important in the process. So kind of, loosening back a little bit. I think you and I even talked about this when you were on our podcast, like just even having the wherewithal to talk with your significant other and be like, hey, let's plan this ahead. Let's plan this week out and, be on the same page so that neither of us are getting surprised by anything. So great, very, very grateful that my wife was patient to put up with all this, but she also is very entrepreneurially minded herself. She started her own business a couple of years ago, and that's really been taking off. So we're definitely, together in entrepreneurship, having a blast, seeing a lot of struggles, going through all the ups and downs, but it's been a good time.
No, that is so awesome. And I think the communication part is such a key. And I think we did talk about it on the podcast too, because I mean, I was the same way. I didn't really say anything. I didn't really talk about it. And then you realize you're starting to build two different lives and two different versions of yourself. And so letting them in allows it to feel like to them that it's all one version of you, and that they get to have an aspect of essentially the business that's getting built. And I would say, you've built multiple businesses, from Lex Clean Space, a bakery with your wife, I believe. Right. Yep. And so what were some of the biggest mistakes or challenges that you faced in your first year of business, as well as like once you started scaling and having multiple businesses?
When you talk about mistakes, if you're trying to rank order like the biggest ones, that's where it gets tricky, because there are so many to choose from. It's like, let's see, what were the biggest problems? I think I would have done much better if I had like mentorship is something that I really preach to people now, because I'm on the back end of not seeking out the kind of mentorship I should have had earlier. So I can kind of see the hindsight, looking back. I wish I had sought some people out that were really accomplished, like in a cleaning business, that I could say, hey, this is what I'm getting ready to do. What do I need to be aware of? Particularly, like, we started out in residential cleaning, and then a year and a half in, we added commercial cleaning, and that's where the bulk of our revenue is today, is on the commercial front. Those are very different markets. You have completely different cash flow operations going between the two. And it was just knowing that one was going to be different and seeing that change. If I had at least done a little bit more work to reach out to people that, were already accomplished there, and sat down even 30, 60 minutes, been able to learn from them, that would have helped me avoid a lot of the pitfalls that we had to experience the hard way, right? Business is a big trial and error experiment. But if you can talk to people that have already been through the minefield, they can just tell you, hey, don't step there, and there, and you won't blow up. It's like, that's already available. So try to take advantage of that. And I did a little bit too much the hard way because I was figuring it out solo. So those were in any business, the times that have been hardest have just been the decisions that I made without, consulting people. I have a great network, man. And I had a good network even, 5 years ago, and I could have utilized it a lot better to get ahead of things before they took place. So that's kind of, to like make a summary, that's what I'd say is, if I were to do it again, I'd reach out to a few more people and be like, hey, this is what I'm looking to do. What should I be on the lookout for? What should I be avoiding? What decisions do I need to be making now to, forestall the things that are coming down the road in 6 months? And that's what I would tell people that are getting started. It's like, if this is the industry you're picking, find 3 or 4 people that would sit down and, kind of walk you through what they did good and bad, and write all that down, take it to the bank, and just be on the lookout for it. So
no, definitely. I mean, mentorship is huge. And I think we all learn this, as an entrepreneur. You learn that you don't need to be the one that solves every problem. You don't need to be the person that does it, all by yourself to be classified as an entrepreneur. Right. Yeah. And so I'm big on mentors, from the franchise and everything. We hired mentors. And when you look at it and you put your ego and your, have a little bit of humility, you're condensing your timeline to success, right? Someone else has already walked this path. Sure. Why not just get the answers and then tweak it up and implement, right? 100%. So what role do you think that creativity and adaptability play in your entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah. So again, creativity is always interesting for me, because everything that has been created in any of the businesses that I have been part of or have founded in some capacity, they have all been at the hands of somebody else. I have zero new ideas. I look for systems that I can duplicate that have worked, and then I duplicate. That's all I do. So if I need something creative, if it's like a logo or something, I go to my wife, I go to a designer. We've worked with several that have been excellent. So that's just like my creativity. That's not my strong point. I don't try to do something I'm not good at. Adaptability, on the other hand, I have had to implement a few times. And I guess my biggest thing on adaptability, again, looking back, is I can talk about like 3 different things in Lex Clean. Like, there are 3 different points that come to mind. I won't share all of them. Where there was a certain change. So it was actually going from, one really big one was going from residential to commercial. We almost didn't do that. And again, most of our revenue today in the company is commercial. We almost didn't do commercial because I was in the middle of transitioning from traditional residential to doing short term, like just becoming like an Airbnb cleaning company. That's kind of all the market we were going to focus in on. There was an opening in the area. I was like, okay, we're going to double down on this. My buddy is a continuous improvement leader over at a dairy factory. And he's like, hey, Aram, our company's on the way out. I want you to come out and give us a quote. And I'm like, oh, no, we don't do commercial, because we'd only done some like retail commercial. It was not good, very bad margins. And so I just didn't want to do it. So I told him no, like 3 times. He just keeps bugging me. He sends me a list of all the things they do day and weekly. And he's like, well, just give me a ballpark range for what this would be. So he sends this thing over. I give him a number. I threw a bunch of money on top of that. I thought would just get him off my back. I was like, look, the range is going to be this. It's going to be stupid. And it's like, yeah, that's an all bar park. I was like, oh crap, really? And so that's how we got into commercial. And there've been a couple other events like that in various things that I've done, where at the time, if it was just me saying no the first time, we wouldn't have done it, because my thought process was, oh, well, I don't think it's this, that, or the other. And so for me, adaptability was the things that I turned down initially that I thought weren't going to be any good actually ended up seismically changing the outcome of our businesses today. And so for me, I used to think I was like a super open-minded person, very balanced, and looking at a lot of new data all the time. And I've surprised myself with how, a little bit closed-minded I can be on some of these topics. And so it's helped me come a long way, and I no longer say no to anything immediately, like almost at all. If something's completely out of our wheelhouse, like somebody reached out to us for like it was like a crime scene cleanup, which is a totally different certification. Like you have to have that's a whole different, like I can clearly say, no, we can't do that. You have to go to this like other company. But unless it's completely outside of our certification, there's almost nothing in any business that I'm part of now, or like even helping my wife, like, don't say no to anything immediately. Let's at least get some more info. Let's test the water, see what it is, send a quote. And then if they say no, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But I've come a long ways in learning that you don't know a lot the way it is. So don't assume, especially on new opportunities, that you think you know what they are before you find out. Because I mean, we'd be making a lot less money right now if the people I had turned down initially just took me at the first go, instead of pushing the envelope a little bit. So just ironic how some of this turns out. But
no, I mean that is so true, right? You don't know what opportunity is going to lead from it. You don't know what it itself could really bear fruit from it. And sometimes you just gotta take a leap, try it. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. But you, at the end of the day, why limit yourself or cap yourself and say, sorry, we only do it this way? And it's
right.
Like, maybe your business, especially in the beginning, your business is not that big or not that established to niche down that much, right? So, and
sure.
I was talking to someone the other day, and they were like, well, I heard riches are in the niches, and I was like, yeah, but you don't have any clients, so you can't claim that you have a niche yet if you don't have anyone to say, see, this is our past results. This is why we do it with this, and he was like, oh, that makes sense. I was like, broaden your umbrella, grow, and then niche down. And then he was like, that makes more sense. But
that is so true. So I'll say, like, when I started out, because I had the background in butlering, my initial approach to residential cleaning was like, well, we're just going to target really, really high income households, right? We can develop a really unique experience. That was a niche market that we very quickly had to broaden. And just like you said, it's like started out too niche. So we broadened, got the customer base, and then we could start zoning in a little bit. And then we had customers come to us and we're like, if you don't really fit the profile, like, I can refer you out. But we knew what we could offer, what we were good at that point. And you're spot on. It's like sometimes coming in with a super, super niche category right out of the gate before you developed what we'd call in software product market fit is totally backwards. Like you have to be a little bit broader on the funnel and then cue in as you've developed that customer base. So great, great little tip there for all of you guys listening. That was good stuff, Devin. I've never heard people like say it quite like that, but that is totally true.
So, and I want to say, I want to, real quick, just talk about the crime scene cleanup.
Oh, gosh.
Now, was that for like a law enforcement agency, or was it the bad guys that,
Yeah. It wasn't the mafia. No, it wasn't any perpetrators that reached out, thankfully. I mean, I'm assuming that was the case. No, it was really just a classification thing. I don't know how they initially got our contact info, but Lex Clean's in the name, so sometimes they could just roll through some stuff and give us a call. I don't remember who even referred them, but it was like right out of the gate. I'm like, wait, what is this? What exactly is the scope? And when they told me, it's like, no, like that's not. You literally have to have a whole different set of licensing for that. You have disposal requirements. It's just and now I have been in homes and we have turned some residences over that looks like someone died in there for sure. It was not confirmed it looked that bad, but like actual crime scene cleanup is just that's a different ball of wax. Again, it is actually pretty niche. And generally the companies that do that most of the time only do that. Like it is a hyper niche, like this is boom. And they're like, you'll work with local law enforcement or some sort of governing body and kind of a direct line partner type of thing. Just not something I was like super, super keen on. It also didn't fit our brand. So we never pursued that.
And you definitely have to have a different kind of stomach for it too.
Yeah. Which I don't personally. It would be hard for me to train people for that because I don't do super well with gore. So that was not another, this is like a dumb story. I remember in high school, there was an anatomy class. There was a lecture series and they were showing, I forget now, it's a surgery where they take a super, super small camera and they do surgery on people with the gallbladders and stuff. So it's like an incision. They put the camera in there and there was like this little pre-thing where it's like, hey, this might be sensitive for some people, so you don't have to watch this section if like you're queasy. I was like, what the heck? Dude, I almost passed out. I was like 2 minutes in and I couldn't even handle that. I was like, what the heck? So yeah, I'm not great for gore.
Oh, that's funny. So I want to ask, for people that are, or what advice would you have for people that are hesitant to take that leap of faith and, become a business owner, but really have that desire or that, dream of doing so?
Yeah. It's a great question. When I think early on when I was really getting enamored by the idea, and I still am enamored by the idea of making income in any other way other than employ, I started to think, oh man, everybody should be a business owner, right? Everybody should do this. It's just like it's the best way to make money. I've kind of come away from that to a degree where I'm just like, hey, what is your goal, right? If your goal, whatever that is, if your 10-year, 20-year, 30-year plan is to be here, how are you best going to accomplish that? And for a lot of people, that's, man, I want to do a 9-to-5. I'm going to dump a bunch of money into a 401k and I know what I'm going to have at the end of it. And like everything's going to be peachy. Cool. Go for it. Don't do it. So you should run that play. For people that want to be entrepreneurs, sometimes they look at it from a get rich quick type of thing. And there are just no legal get rich quick schemes out there. So plenty of illegal ones. And if that's, what you're looking at, I'd still advise against it because it's not a great payout in the long run. But if you want to do it the right way, it's so much more work than I think a lot of people understand when they're starting out. And they think that it's a really glitzy, like, oh yeah, I'm going to, open this up. I got a logo design and we're going to go gangbusters and it's going to be amazing. We're going to hit 1 million ARR in month 2. And you get the unicorns that pull it off. It's amazing when it happens. But for the majority of the cases, I tell people you're going to work a lot longer and a lot harder, making a lot less money just for much longer than you anticipated. Like if you thought you're going to get here and make this money, that timeline is probably another year or 2 out, and you're working twice as hard as you thought you were going to be. So you have to adjust those expectations to begin with. Now, if your goal is financial independence, ownership and being able to set your own terms, and you understand that it's harder than working and getting a W-2, then okay, good. You've at least like you've come to terms with that. So come to terms, adjust your expectations. I don't want to shy anybody away from it. I just don't want people to get into it dreaming that it is something that it's probably not. Because a lot of people get burned out in the first, 3 months and like, oh heck, this isn't working. I haven't sold anything. I don't have customers. And that could be for a variety of reasons, but yeah, don't romanticize it like I think what you might imagine it to be in your head. Try to be a little bit more realistic. And again, that comes back to talking to people that have been successful, because if you talk to anybody that's successful, they'll say the exact same thing. They're like, yeah, this is not going to be a walk through the park, and week 3 is not going to be the best of your life, So I would just, tell people that. And then I would ask people to kind of tell me on a scale of 1 to 10 where they're at on risk averseness. This is just something I keep coming back to. Are you super, super risk averse? If you are if that really bothers you, then it is going to be hard, right? You're going to have to set much, much lower limits. If you're like, oh, I can lose this much, you're going to have to, drop that way down and hope that this thing takes off really early. You might have to do a lot more background work. You might have to spend 3 or 4 years on the development stage, really getting something super, super crisp before you launch if you're hyper risk averse. Because if you're like me and you're, willing to try things out a lot more, it's fine. But I think people just need to be honest from a psychological standpoint with where they are personally and what they can tolerate, and then develop a plan around that with good mentorship, good counsel that can help them. So it's not like a bunch of one-liners and like super awesome like 1, 2, 3 plays. It's just look at things legitimately, be honest with yourself, get some outside perspective, and develop a plan. It's a lot less sexy than I think people want it to be. It's just like, this is just how it is. But we're super sensationalist culture. And so we like to think of things in like bright lights and big moments and very, very quick. And we just gotta, dial it down, be a little bit more realistic.
No, I love that. And honestly, I agree with everything that you said. That is how it is. That's the real talk, as they say.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And so the last question I want to ask, before we wrap up, is your legacy wall. And on your legacy wall, this is not a tombstone. It is not, anything of that nature. So I like to say that ahead of time, because it's the message that you've learned, or the message essentially that you learned from your life's journey for the up and coming generations, right? And it could be short, it could be long, but what would that one message be?
Probably it can be done, but it's probably harder than you think. But I like to lead with it can be done, because I really think just about anything's possible. Particularly, this is 2025. Man, you and I, when we were growing up, not that long ago, because I'm not that old, you're not that old, but I remember dial-up internet, and we were moving from dial-up internet into like high-speed internet, and that was revolutionary, right? You weren't waiting 4 minutes for every web page to load while you went and mowed the lawn, something like that. Like things have moved drastically just in our lifetime. I think we're way more connected. We have way more information. We have way more education available to us. The people that you've interviewed on this podcast, we can glean from all of these individuals, right? And get light years ahead of people 100 years ago, for example. So there's much more that's possible now. So I think just about anything can be done. But again, it's probably harder. You need to come to terms with that, develop a plan around it being hard, and then go for it.
I love that. And it is true. And so where can people connect with you?
LinkedIn is really the best place. I'm on that probably the most. And so I'm really easy to find. Aram Street. There aren't too many of us out there. So if you find me there on LinkedIn, I'll be sure to respond. It'd be great to connect with anybody.
Yeah. And then guys, that will be in the show notes. That'll also be in the video description if you're watching on YouTube. But make sure you guys share this episode with a friend. This is straight up the real talk of, taking a bet on yourself, really diving in and taking that leap of faith. So, not only for you, but who's that one person that that is trying to, or has always talked about becoming an entrepreneur, or taking their passion and making it a reality, right? Send this episode to them. But Aram, I want to say, thank you again for taking the time out of your day to hop on the Mindset Cafe and just drop some knowledge.
Dude, Devin, it's been great talking with you again now. And thanks so much for having me on. This has been a lot of fun.
Of course, brother. We'll definitely connect again soon.
All right. Cheers, buddy.
No negative vibes, only positive thoughts. Cause in the game of life, mindset calls the shots. Got my mind on the prize, I can't be distracted. I stay on my grind, no time to be slacking. I hustle harder, I go against the